Well, could you say anything about like how to date?
Oh, sure.
Or like what to look for in terms of what are some marks of older glass or?
All right. Let me give you some examples. Glasses were either free blown or blown in a mold. In this case, this was on the banks of the river in Bridgeton, Stevens Brook. It's got a nice color. It's a little beat up. But my first thought was, oh, it's probably nothing. Then I looked at it a little closer and I said, oh, there's no mold line on it. I can't find a seam running all the way from the bottom to the top. What they would have done would have had a piece of hot glass on the end of a blow rod, blow it into a mold where they'd snap the mold shut like that, and it would blow the bottle into the mold. So it would have a line all the way up or most of the way up. The top, they would say, well, when that's getting close to cooling, they'll run a tool around it, and they'll create a mouthpiece. That's what this is. This one here was just tooled. They simply took a tool, wrapped it around it while it was still hot enough, and left it, let it harden. But they also did something on this one to hide. They started getting creative. They hid the mold lines once when it's still a little bit soft. They would spin it, and turning the bottle would hide the mold lines. They tried to be creative. So you can see, if you look at it, there are lines that go this way, around in a circle, as it was spun around.
Makes it look like
so this, glass. Right. So this was called a spin mold, or they made it spinning it. I have some other ones. I think I have a pontle here somewhere. You know, I couldn't bring the whole museum here. I wish I could have. I have some beautiful pieces that have a nice iron pontle in the bottom. Which one? Oh yeah, here's one Chris found digging with me, and I don't know how he has the luck like this, but it's a pontle perfume made about, they only did this pontle, it's where they stick a rod in the bottom and use it to hold the glass in place while they make the rest of it. They only did that from 1840 to 1860. So if you find a bottle with a pontle bottom, you can date it right away. It was only those 20 years. Ones like this go for quite a bit more than the ones with a smooth bottom. This is called an improved pontle. They kind of fancied it up a little bit, left a little dimple. And then they have some with no pontle at all, which would date it more around 1860 to 1900. Right at 1900, this company called Owens Manufacturing created a machine called the automatic bottle machine. In your book, if you have a bottle book, that's what the ABM stands for. Once they started that, they just mass-produced bottles, and you know, blue, clear, white, every color you can imagine, green. Not a lot of them. Well, that peanut butter jar had some value, but a lot of the other ones don't have a lot of value. This has a disc lip, which I'm surprised it survived. The disc lips are very good. If you can find a bottle with a disc lip and a pontle, you're doing really well. It's a perfume. It's got a little damage to it, but if it didn't, you know, it's a nice little $40, maybe $50 bottle. He's got the luck of the Irish. I don't know. I was showing him how I dig, and he came along and
got the touch.
Went there when I wasn't around and dug this nice little antique Japanese pillbox. And it's got some writing on it. It's probably dated, again, mid 1800s, probably 1850. Very nice piece. Yeah. So, dating bottles, pottery is typically around 1850. They stopped and switched over to glass in that time frame, 10 years before, 10 years after. I mean, way before, really. Sometimes we find pieces like this that I don't know what they are, and I think, well, it's just an insulator, not worth anything, and I almost threw this back in the stream. This was in Norway. And then I thought, well, let me take it and see if I could figure out what it is. Then a lady came into the museum one day and she said, oh, I get $40 all day long for these things. This is a antique match holder with a striker on the side. So I've learned not to just toss something away just because I can't identify
Yep.
it. But it's pretty. Match holder. But back to identifying glass. The older pieces, like I said, with a two-piece mold, usually the mold line will stop short of the lip. That's how you can tell for sure that it's been handmade. This one, same thing. It cooled down. It has a smooth base, no pontil, so it's probably 1880, 1890, that 20-year gap. The higher the mold line, typically, the newer it is. If it goes all the way over the lip, then it's, again, machine made. This is probably a shoe polish jar, worth a couple dollars. Looks like at one point someone paid $3 for it. Yeah, worth $1 or $2. Because it doesn't have any writing. It's old, handmade, but just not very rare. Not identifiable.
If it was embossed, it would be.
If it was embossed, it could be better. I have some here. Let me show you. These are out of that collection.
Do you sell stuff at your museum?
We do, yeah. We have to, basically to pay the bills.
Take donations?
The donations come in, but they've averaged about $1 per visitor.
You take
So
bottles?
500. What's that?
You take bottles?
We do. We take bottles. We display bottles. Some people just want certain items on display, and we'll do that too. Kind of have to encompass everything to make it work. The first couple of years I was a little nervous about us surviving, but one gentleman who was connected with the old museum, he really kicked in some funds to help us get going, to pay the first couple of years lease, and he just informed me this year that was his last year. That last year, 2013, is the last time he could contribute. So that's why I went back to the town and renegotiated the lease, and we're at a manageable level now. And I think we can make it on our own. I don't mean on our own, but I mean I think it can carry its own weight with the customers, people coming in, visitors. The kids get to go in there, cap soda bottles. We've got a table just filled with soda bottles. It's probably the most common thing I find. But even the early Cokes, look for that date, 1923.
And the towns.
And the what?
The towns on the bottom.
And the town on the bottom. If you find a 1915 Coke, I found one almost in my backyard, and I sold it for $81. So that was on eBay, and a gentleman said, I'll buy every one you find like this for $81. Same price. I thought, what's different about it? It was blue tinted, and it had a real thick bottom, and collectors love that on those Cokes, because there's a million Cokes out there. But look for 1915, or what they call the Christmas Coke, December 25th. That's about a $20, $25 bottle. If it's good, if it's in good shape.
You got a Coke bottle to explain how you find the date on them?
Oh, well, the dates
Very
on the
hard to
Coke,
find.
I don't have one with me. The date on the Coke bottles are in front. If it doesn't have a date, it's probably not that collectible, because they did make a lot of Cokes with no dates. This is a typical handmade flask. It says Union made. Kind of pretty. I noticed I have one at home that came out of this group that I really want to research it. It's actually slightly blue tinted, and I've never seen a flask that was blue tinted like this. So I'm going to do a little more research on it. Maybe that's a pretty rare one. But this is typical, and if you get a nice name on the front, that's always great. You know, Cornish. I have one bottle in the museum that says Cornish, Maine. It's an old one. I have some here from Rockland, Lewiston, Auburn. They have names of towns on them. Those are pretty collectible. There are ways to look these up too. If you don't have bottle books, I have all the books. But if you don't have a bottle book, you can typically type that name into eBay, and it'll show you any other bottles listed with that same name. And that's a great way to know what the market's going to pay for something too. You know, if I want to know before I sell something what it's worth. And I want to know if I could possibly get $100 or $10. If I see one identical to one I really like say there was one of these and I said, oh man, one just sold for $10. I'm not letting that go for 10. You know, that's easily a $50, $60 bottle, maybe a little more. It's perfect. You don't find them absolutely perfect. I can't find a single scratch on it. And for that much time, that's nice. This was neat. Fellow was selling this, and normally I wouldn't give you $5 for a little inkwell. This is fairly common, but this one is so filled with crude bubbles. The maker must have made a mistake when he was making it, and he didn't let the glass cool at a slower speed or something, and all the bubbles became trapped inside the glass. So that's kind of unique. You know, it makes it worth a little more. It's handmade because you can see the mold line stops just below the lip. So usually they say Carter's, so I flipped it over. It says Carter's on the bottom. But what's really neat is, I don't know if they shipped this to Carter's company. You know, the glass maker shipped a bunch of them and didn't look at the bottom, but it's got a complete smooth hole. It's not broken. It's the way he made it, with a hole all the way through the bottom. So I'm thinking either Carter's filled it up with ink and said, there's a reject, you know, the ink just came right out the bottom, or it may have never gotten to the Carter's refill company. But it's just nice to see how crude this was, and one of those bubbles that this guy left in the glass just basically opened up and cooled that way. That's pretty neat to see. You just don't see it too often. Trying to think, are there any questions? Yeah.
Curious to know, you say you're digging, right?
Yes.
You're obviously not using shovels and going haphazardly.
Trying to be fairly careful, yes.
Do you have tools that you...
I use, my favorite tool is a short rake, a 3-pronged rake, and I found a long handle one, like, you know, 3 or 4 feet long. Not too long, but about 3 or 4. It gives me a little leverage. If it's got longer tines and it's heavy duty, I can move more dirt. That's about the best. But when I get into a smaller area, a little 3-pronged hand rake works really well. And usually we don't just dig random, we find an area that the chances are really good that there's going to be old glass there. In with the old glass is the metal and the things like this. This is just a toy. Nobody, don't have to worry.
We find those.
Cast iron, what's that?
We find those metal detectors.
Oh, you do?
So
it's always in with the glass. This says safety or Stevens repeater. That's kind of cute.
the old Capcom.
Yep, and I found this in Sebago last fall, digging bottles. It's complete, cast iron. There was one time I found a bank. I found one side of an old cast iron bank. I kept digging, I found the other side, and the other side. By the end of the day I had all 4 sides, and I thought, well, it'd be nice to find the top. The next day I went back and I found the top. So I had a friend of mine just tack weld the 4 sides, and I put the top on it, and the bank is almost a perfect image of the town bank that was in Bridgeton. So it's kind of a neat little cast iron. Yep. Always find things like that. This, I'm told that these are, somebody call it cow topper. So,
That's not the tool handle.
The other one.
oh, the other one is?
They put those on the end of
That's on the end of oxen, so you wouldn't get...
No,
That's a
that's
ham.
That's a ham.
What's that?
The other one you had
On
ham.
a
Slave.
grip on a
Oh.
harness setup, like on an oxen setup.
Oh,
Yeah.
There
made
are the
out-
smaller ox knobs for the parts that screwed onto them.
okay. Find a lot of, find a lot of tags, and a lot of bells.
Exactly, yeah.
I found a nice big brass bell.
Can
Yep.
you explain colors?
Colors in glass?
Yeah, there's a certain color that you always look for, right?
Well, any color is good. They had learned to put different chemicals in their glass making, and it would change the glass to a different color. You've probably heard of cobalt glass. Well, there's a cobalt powder that they would put into the mix, and it would turn the glass blue. Again, color was great because it could hide what was in if it was a whiskey bottle. You didn't want to see all the sediment and stuff that was in there. So colored bottle was great. Brown was perfect. You could hide a lot with brown. One of the things they learned to do once they started purifying all these foods and things like that, they said, hey, we could make the glass clear by putting, we call them sun-colored amethyst. Those clear bottles, I don't know why that slipped my mind, but they put a chemical in the glass mix that would actually turn the glass totally clear. And that was a later, that's why the bottles that are newer don't have the aqua tint. They put that compound in there, the glass is clear. The interesting thing about that is when you put that in a window, though, it can turn it slightly purple. It takes time, and we find them sometimes if they were sitting on top of the ground for 10, 20 years, you get some pretty purples. Like, oh, here's one. This is a nice one. This is a little pocket flask. It says honest measure. I love the way they used to just throw stuff out like that. And it's perfect because it's a good size for your pocket. You know, you could be at work, nobody know that you just needed a little nip. And you take it out, pop the cork, take a nip. But this must have been left in the sun because it's got some nice sun-colored amethyst color. And these bottles, when they have this purple tint, they are worth more. This would normally be probably maybe a $10, $12 little pocket flask, cute one, but maybe worth a little bit more with a sun color, maybe 15.
Is there also a depression glass that was like combinations of different colors melted down that was also a purple shade?
Yeah, depression glass is typically, they're talking about the Depression era, 1920s, 1919 up to 1929, I think. And it's, a lot of times it's a green glass. You'll see these plates that are, it's almost this color.
Okay.
Maybe not quite that dark.
Okay.
But they also have it in Vaseline, and I found a picture in Freiburg in the Saco River, way up in the old river, 2 years ago. It was a blue pitcher. Somebody told me that was depression glass. Found a green pitcher that matched it in Hiram in the river. We found some green plates.
Those the ones you put on the blue light and they glow?
That's Vaseline glass.
That's radioactivity.
Yep. There's Vaseline glass. I might have a piece of that with me.
Do you have any in your museum?
Yes.
You have a lot? Okay.
We have some Vaseline glass. There's an old gentleman that gave me a basket of broken glass, and he said, "Do you want this?" And I said, "Sure, I'll put it on display." You know, it's interesting little pieces. As I dug through it, I found a little piece of paper. It said, "Fragments of glass extracted from the old Sandwich Glass Museum in Sandwich, Massachusetts." And all of these are rare pieces. And I brought a couple to show you. They were known for making just fabulous colors when it came to glass. This, if you hold it to the light, it's turquoise. This is probably a inkwell, it looks like. It's just the top of it. But the colors and pieces, what I do is somebody wants a book on the sandwich glass industry. They were in business from 1820 to 1880. So I have the books at about a quarter of what they normally go for because I recovered them from a closed library. So I make those available, and I include a piece of this sandwich glass recovered from the site that you can't dig at anymore. If you do, you'd get arrested. It's all houses, and it's all,
Your wife
private
says she's
property.
not driving the sandwich?
What's that?
Your wife says she's not driving the sandwich?
No. Yeah, you can pass these around if anybody wants to see them. Certainly walk around after. Very pretty pieces of glass. So there was another question.
Yeah, when I was 12 years old, I found it down.
Yep.
And I started raking through it, and I found this bottle that was really light, almost had a little sea green, really light kind of green like that. And
Yep.
at the bottom of the bottle, I almost threw it away because it looked like somebody snapped it had broken, but it was just a round spot that was broken. And so anyways, I took all this stuff. I wanted to buy my brother's Honda, and he was in Vietnam, and he left it there. And I was 12 years old, so I took it to this guy that collected bottles with a bunch of other bottles, and he gave me 50 bucks for it. And I asked him, I said, "Well, how much is it worth?" And he said, "Son, that bottle's worth just as much as you can get for it, not a cent more."
Yeah.
So I sold it for $50 for him.
He's
And
right.
I'm wondering, how much was that bottle worth? He
Well,
said, I think it was in a wooden mold, he said, when